Welcome to episode 30 of Beer with Strangers. I'm your host, Tony Russo, and I'm here with my co-host, as always, Doug Griffith.
Hello, Tony. And just for the weather report today, rain.
Lots of rain.
Although it didn't start raining until about an hour ago, and it's just very light. But all day, the humidity has been horrible if you're outside. So anyway, we really have rain now. So
well, that was the thing when I got here. I mentioned to Doug that it was just unbelievably humid. Like, it got worse. Like, you could tell it was one of those rains where it's going to be uncomfortably warm now. It's going to go from real humid to just walking around with a wet sock.
170%.
170% humidity. Lots of fun stuff this week. Lots of cool stuff coming up. The first thing I wanted to talk about a little bit was I found out some horrible things about Doug this week, and I wanted to tease him about them. I've been working on a book. I don't know if I've mentioned it. I have. One of the things that I was interested in is like how all of these. I'm going to take my glasses off because it's distracting me. How all of these local breweries got started, because in the last year we've had about 5, 6, 4, a bunch.
Yeah.
We've had a bunch open up in the region. And for the last part of the book, I'm talking to as many of them as I can. And the one that I went to this week and last week and the week before, I was talking to them, and I've been trying to set up these interviews for a long time, and it's hard to get in touch with brewers because they're busy working. They're not like me sitting home in their underpants all day. So eventually I get it down, and they're like, oh, yeah, well, Doug, well, he helped us. And they're like, I'm like, yes, I talked to Doug for about an hour a week, and he has yet to mention the fact that he's opened all of these breweries personally in the region. So I think I'm going to pick his brain for the next couple weeks, both to see if I missed anything in my book while I still have a chance to fix it, and also because I think it's cool stuff for you guys to know. And finally, we're going to have some of these brewers on before too long, and then we'll all have a little bit of background for them. If you'd like to ask questions or join in the conversation, you are welcome to chime in. Just ask a question on the Q&A, or you can ping us if pinging us is the kind of thing that you would like to do. But we can get you all set and answer your questions. We'll also answer questions about brewing, homebrew issues, problems, concerns, or interests.
Well, we can have pro brewers call in and ask questions.
That's what I'm hoping. I really feel like before too long.
I don't know if I'm up to that.
The guy from Deschutes or whatever, he'll give us a call and saying, what's that funny smell? Yeah. It could be like car talk where people could call and they could make like noises like my kettle's doing this, bang bang bang, and we have to figure out what the noise is.
I mean, these guys that are commercial breweries or commercial brewers, they have such a background. They've seen so much more because they're brewing every day, and they've seen a lot more problems what most home brewers see in a lifetime.
Right. There's more going on, so there's more to go wrong. But I wanted to talk to you, the Vince Wright, who I spoke with, and I just spoke with him yesterday, the day before. He started brewing here.
Well, not here, but at Millsboro. We did. We've always done extract classes, and we've done all grain classes, at least 2, sometimes 3 times a year. And he's come to several of them, I guess, starting maybe 5 years ago. And then I think 3 years ago he opened the brewery in Ocean City at Hooper's.
Right.
So yes, he did attend some of our classes, and that got him started into wanting to be able to brew commercially.
Now, one of the things that again is it's turning out to be a theme in my book is people they homebrew for a while, they get good at it, and then they open breweries, and then they call you and you come and set their breweries up. How do you get roped into those things?
I've helped. I won't say I've done the whole thing. And that was one thing that I told Vince. I'm pretty good with concept and doing things and telling you what you need to do, but I'm not a professional.
Right.
I don't want you to come back and say, well, you said this.
I did say that. I also said, brew in 5-gallon batches.
Yeah,
I didn't listen to that.
But I helped them. They went out. This is Vince and the people at Hooper's. They found online stainless steel vessels that could be used for brewing. It was not the fancy stuff. They wanted to be able to open as soon as possible, and they had gone to a manufacturer who said, well, it's probably 6 to 8 months, and they didn't want to wait that long. So I said, well, you can have some of this stuff, purchase the stuff, have somebody modify it. They found somebody who was a good stainless steel welder, so they got the tanks, modified it to meet the need, and then started brewing.
And then had to wait 6 to 8 months to open while the paperwork went through. Yes, that's one of the things that I guess in the real beer history book that gets written, somebody's going to have to tackle the problems with the IRS ran into. It was the shutdown. It was during the government shutdown.
Sequester.
The sequester, right? One of the downsides was that no labels could be approved, no new licenses could be issued. So you had all of these breweries who were weeks from opening, and they just ran into a wall, and they couldn't sell anything that they were making.
I think they just slowed down purposely so they could say,
"Oh, I see.
Issues with the sequester."
Take a day off, take a week off.
Because my understanding, this kind of sidetrack.
No, go ahead.
But my understanding of the sequester was that they had no new. In other words, they normally get a 5 or 6, 7% increase in their budget.
Right.
So it had to go back to what it was the previous year. So they didn't get this increased money, so they just had to operate on what they had the previous year.
Yes. No, but but what the bottleneck was I think like 500 breweries opened. 500 more breweries open.
Well, that's the
the year before they had 150 breweries open, and then they had 500 open. So that's what it was. It was like a perfect storm of bad luck. But I got to see the Hooper setup, and if you come to Ocean City, you should go see the Hooper setup because it's very cool. Would you like to talk about it? Yeah. Floor? You can't really take the tour. When you walk in, you can see the whole brewery.
But you got to look up, very far up.
They have it up in the rafters in the attic, essentially. But it's an open attic, so you can see them brewing. You can see them brewing, and you can also see them kegging, which is an interesting process. I don't know if you've had a chance to see that or not.
I haven't been back since they got things going initially and started kegging. So
what they do is they bring out their kegs, 14 kegs. They're on a 7-barrel system. A keg's half a barrel. Right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. And so they bring out their kegs and they put them on the floor in the restaurant. Usually before the restaurant's open. I don't know if they do it when the restaurant's
normally closed when it's closed.
Yeah, usually when the restaurant's closed. I happen to be there. And then they throw down the tubes. They throw down the tubes, pipes.
Tube with
hoses.
With tap on it. Right.
Hoses.
Yeah.
And they let gravity fill the tanks for them. So they don't have they didn't have the expense of having to purchase a pump to pump the beer into the tank because gravity puts it in for them.
And it's probably about 20 feet of gravity.
So. puts it in nice and quickly. They did all 14 in under an hour while I was there. And what is interesting about it is it's part of a cycle or a larger cycle where they fill the tanks up and then they bring them outside and then back underneath the bar, which is next to where they filled up the tanks. And then so the tanks are under the bar. They hook them up to the tap system. They pour all the beer. When they're done pouring the beer, they take the kegs off the tap, wash them in the basement, and then bring them up to the kitchen and put them in the refrigerator so that they're cold when the same temperature of the beer. What happens if they're not? I didn't ask you.
It will foam some because it's carbonated, it's cold, just like a glass. It works better if you're pouring beer into a cold glass, or at least a glass that's cool versus a glass that's warm. So it foams.
So it doesn't change the temperature.
It doesn't agitate the beer, so that the CO2 foams up.
I see. So you get fuzzier beer. You you don't lose any carbonation to the process.
Correct.
Awesome. So they do that, and then the cycle begins again, and they just have these 14. They probably have 28 kegs, but just on this constant cycle. But beyond that, they started distributing, and they took a really novel approach to distributing. But I want to skip ahead to our little bit of a news story, but I want you guys to bookmark that because we're going to talk about that again in a second. A little bad news today, a brewery in Mississippi called Gordon Creek Brewing closed. You don't like to see breweries closed, but I read the story's on the page. One of the things that bothered me was when they interviewed the owner about why it was closing, he's like, well, craft brew is cyclical and, we're just on a down cycle. That's not my experience. My experience is we're on, if not, we're just maybe growing slower. Maybe craft brew is growing a little bit slower than it had been. But this brewery was only open for 14 months. It wasn't as if it had been there for years and years and years. And he was brewing on a 5-gallon system, and I couldn't find any 5-barrel. 5-barrel. I'm sorry. Yeah. But I couldn't find any more information. But as far as I could figure, it could have been something other than craft brewing dying that put him out of business.
But you never know what they were brewing, what the local clientele was looking for. There's so many variables in why a brewery would not be successful or why they are successful.
Right.
You have to brew to the clientele that's going to be drinking the beer.
And you have to be willing to learn from your mistakes. The other thing that I was suspicious about but I couldn't find out is I was wondering whether or not he actually hired a brewer. I was speaking with Ace Moritz this week, who runs Eastern Shore Brewing in St. Michael's. And Eastern Shore Brewing had something of a name, not a great name, for quite some time. And by the time he figured that out, he at least had the courage to admit it. And so what he did was he shut down production. He hired a brewer. The brewer came in. He fixed the water, which was terrible. He fixed the processes. He got out the BJCP book.
Beer Judge Certification Program.
And they made all of their beers bang. They didn't do anything interesting for their 6 beers that they were doing at the time. And then
they made them to the character specs.
Absolutely nothing. And again, there was nothing surprising or interesting about the beers except that they stopped being bad, which was huge. And then the only thing that he did, which I thought was kind of novel, is he changed the water because he had his water so highly filtered that he had to put minerals back in. So he went and he got water profiles from, for example, like he got a West Coast water profile to use in his IPA, and he got a Colorado profile to use in his American Amber and stuff like that, to at least give it a little bit of zing. Once it was done, then he went back out to the restaurant and said, you know what, my beer wasn't any good. I hired somebody. I'm back on the track. Give me another shot. And it's taken a while. I mean, when
did they do that? Just recently?
Yeah, like 2012 or 2000. Yeah, in the last...
I haven't had any of their beer for a long time.
Neither had I, and I only had it because I went back out to get this interview, and I actually went before the interview, and I was coming back and something, hey, I went to Eastern Shore Brewing, it's awesome, and they're like, are you sure? But it is. If you get a chance to go out there, if you see it on tap, they're also not. The other thing they did was they got.
Michael's.
Huh?
It's in St. Michael's.
Right. Yes, it's in St. Michael's, which is a billion miles away. The other thing they did was they got out of Ocean City. Because Ocean City wanted more beer than they could make, and they didn't want to pay the same amount that they were willing to. I mean, they were getting more money in Annapolis, and it wasn't. Well, they would be getting more money if they could brew for Annapolis, but they couldn't because they had all of their resources committed to Ocean City. So now the only downside is they're not really here anymore. They're maybe I think in Dorchester County, some places, but they're on the Upper Shore, and they're in Annapolis. So all of our DC area viewers, we don't have any yet, but we could any minute.
Yeah.
all of our friends across the bay and in the Upper Shore, if you gave up on them, you definitely should give them another shot because they are very good. And so this brings us back to Fin City, which is the Ocean City beer we were talking about, where Vince Wright, who started brewing here, is the head brewer. And I'm having trouble breathing now. Would you like to tell us what Vince decided to do to meet his capacity?
Yeah, he went to contract brewing. He went to a place in Baltimore, and I can't remember. Peabody, that's right.
Peabody Heights.
And they're brewing to his specs, his recipes, and then they're bottling, labeling, and distributing for him. So it is a way to get his distribution done and not have to invest in the equipment that's needed to do all of that.
But importantly, beyond just doing the contracting, they're actually doing a co-op where he goes up and he works for them. So he's brewing in many cases, not in all cases because he still has a day job, but in many cases he's brewing the beer. He's just brewing it at a bigger brewery. And I
didn't actually know that.
Oh, all right. Yeah, no, yeah. And so what I think his hope is that by the time they're ready to expand here in Ocean City or in the Ocean City region, he'll be
fully trained.
He'll be fully trained.
Pro brewer.
He's working with a guy who was a head brewer in Germany for like a decade or something absurd. Yeah, he was a Filipino. He got his degree in chemical engineering, and then he went and he worked in the German beer industry for a decade. And then he ran Malaysia for a huge Malaysian beer or whatever the Budweiser of Malaysia is. Yeah. Now the Budweiser of Malaysia is probably Budweiser. And then he came to the U.S. He opened a couple breweries, and then he settled down into this Peabody Heights thing. They make Raven beer, which I've had, which isn't bad at all. And they contract a couple, and they do also have this co-op program, which is something that I think is the best of both worlds. I think it's a little bit more engaged than contract brewing. I know that even the guys who do contract brewing aren't always nuts about the fact that they're doing it because they're not getting to make their own beer, which is they didn't get into the business to have someone else make their beer.
But to get distribution, and he's only got a 7-barrel system, as you said, so it allows them to do that without a huge investment.
Absolutely, and now since they all kept their day jobs, eventually they'll be able to open a full-scale brewery here. They're in every county except 2 in Maryland, and in the wintertime they'll be in Delaware and in what else is connected? Virginia. They'll put the Delva in Delmarva.
Yeah.
So I just think that's awesome for them, and I think that's kind of the way to go about it. One of the things that you see more often is that the people who are taking their time to get it right, also, again, maybe they're just lucky, maybe it's just right place, right time, but the people who are taking their time to get it right, I think are doing very well for themselves.
And become successful.
Yeah. Awesome. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about this week was what do you got going on here? I know you're taking open signups for the...
Just taking signups now for classes for either wine or beer, trying to get enough people to make a class of 4 or more. We will start in next month having our scheduled classes, so that will get online here very shortly. But I guess the biggest thing coming new for here is we're going to have a walk-in cooler for our wine juices this fall. So we'll have a place to keep them so that people just don't have to pick them up on the day that they're delivered. So.
Right. It's also always wise to order in advance, but if you happen to...
Yeah, we definitely want to have advance orders for our wine bucket juices, but we'll still don't have to have it on a specific day. Used to be when we had just Millsboro and Lewis, we'd say Friday for Lewis and Saturday for Millsboro, and that's the days you had to pick them up because we didn't have any place to store it. Right. Now we'll have a place to store it and keep it cold, so you don't need to pick it up immediately. But we're still limited on space, so the sooner you get it, the better off it'll be.
One of the things, the other things I have on my list is, are you the tea guy? Who's in charge of tea around this place?
Patty is. She knows. She's been a tea drinker, and she's done a lot of research on the different teas and the different varieties. But we also have coffee too.
Are you the coffee guy?
I drink coffee almost every morning. So, but we've got 2 roasters. One out of Easton is Rise Up, which if you have Rise Up Stout,
that's from what?
Evolution.
Yeah.
You're getting some of their coffee in your beer. But we've got the, I think it's 5 different varieties of Rise Up coffee here. And also we have another roaster called One Village, which is a organization just outside of Philadelphia. So So we've got 2 different roasters, about 5 different roasts from each company.
What I like about Rise Up is that that's a real kind of bootstrap story. I don't know if you're familiar, but you're probably not, so I will tell you. They actually started with like a coffee truck. They had just a small little stand in a farmer's market, and they just did such a good job. The owner, whose name escapes me.
Patty's dealt with him. I'm sorry, I don't know.
We're gonna call him Tim. Sorry, Tim,
Okay.
if it's not your name. But the owner was in like the Peace Corps in coffee world, and he learned all about it there, and he just came back obsessed with making good coffee. And rather than opening a 40,000 square foot coffee roastery, he got a roaster, and he put it in his little truck, and he served coffee at the St. Michael's Flea Market, actually, not far from there. Not far from
Even now, they're in just a small, looks like an old gas station.
Now they're in a gas station in Easton and a gas station in Salisbury.
But the roasting's all done in Easton.
Now the roasting is all done in Easton, which is it's a beautiful, beautiful facility. And they've grown by huge leaps and bounds. They got the Evo contract, which did well for them, and so they're making Rise Up Stout, and they've been probably doing that for 5 years.
Yeah, 5.
Yeah, it's been a long time. So
we actually have a picture of the building in Easton on our website. So.
Oh, that's very cool. Yes, if you get a chance, it's. I've been there. I used to work in Easton, and they made the smartest move any coffee place has ever made in their entire lives. And I talk about it all the time. I'm going to talk about it again. They have an honor bar if you drink black coffee or if you drink coffee and cream. If you want to go in and get a cup of coffee and leave, they have a big thing. They're like, put $2 in the thing. So you come in, you throw your $2, you pour your coffee, you leave. You don't have to stand behind. Oh yeah,
that's great.
I don't like. I don't hate people who do like it, but I don't like cappuccinos or lattes or stuff. And it's always tough when you come in and you're like, I want to get a cup of coffee, and now you're sitting behind somebody who's got a long
line of
6
of this, 3 of that, 2 of this.
Yeah, you've got to blend it, you've got to shake it, you've got to stir it, you've got to ferment it. So being able to walk in,
Just pour me a cup of coffee.
Just pour me a cup of coffee. So you go in there, pow, you're in, you're out. Sometimes there's a line at the coffee place, and one time I was standing on line at the coffee place, and there was nobody at the bar. And the lady behind the bar says, I can get you coffee. I'm like, no, I don't want this to go away. I'm gonna support this little thing over here to make sure you guys don't take this away from me, because I really like that.
Same thing in Salisbury too.
I don't know if they do it. So I wouldn't see why. I don't see why they wouldn't.
Yeah.
But in Easton, it's wonderful.
I've not been down. I've not been to either place. Sean picks up. When we need orders, they're bringing them over from Easton to Salisbury for us, so we don't have to go to Easton to pick them up. But Sean picks them up because he's coming up from Salisbury.
Right. Yeah. So. The reason I was asking about tea is I wanted to see how hard it would be to get our hands on something called Casina tea, and whether it was really a thing or whether it was an
I don't know. You have to ask. Write that down. I have to ask Patty.
Will, one of the things that I've discovered in my research is that they used Casina and other herbs in Berlin to make beer in colonial times because they didn't have hops, and they would make a cream ale, and they would use this tea and some other herbs as a bittering agent. Yeah. So now I'm on the hunt to see what the other herbs were, because I'm very close to finding 2 of the recipes that I mentioned in the book, and if I find them, I'm going to try and trick Ed somehow into making them for me, and then we'll have.
Let us know. We're glad to make it.
Yeah, we'll have some colonial beer, and we'll see how that goes over, and that will be a nice little bump for the book, and because I like really weird beers.
We're going extreme. We try it, and if it tastes good, we'll put it in our lineup.
Why not? Right? You can have 400-year-old beer, like you. You can have that with your 100-year-old eggs from China, and you'll be all set. Other than that, I think we're running out of things that need to be said this week. We are coming up on our curfew. I try to keep it half an hour. We try to keep it half an hour, so that way you don't have to invest too much time, especially if you can't join us. You can always catch us later, which I guess if you're hearing this, you already know about. So we went over what's coming up here. You've got when does the wine ordering start? When can people start ordering their wine?
Now, it's on the website. Both the California and Italian juices are out there online. It's under the Vineyard Direct Juices.
And now you get Spanish wine, Argentinian wine in the spring?
Chilean.
Chilean.
Yeah. Spanish. They speak Spanish.
Yeah, why not? We're not in Spain. But you get that on the you get that both seasons or
end of April, early May.
That's the spring
because
one.
they're the other side.
They're upside down.
Southern hemisphere. Yeah.
It's hard to grow wine when you're upside down all the time.
It's wintertime there now.
And so in other news, if you have any comments, please. I know you're supposed to do this. I don't know. Do you ever watch YouTube videos?
Very little.
Neither do I. But
I do once in a while.
And you're supposed to say, comment right here. Comment down if you've got something to say, questions, concerns. We're going to be on every week at about 5, as close to 5 as I can manage, because this is coming to Laurel is something I always I'm like, it takes 15 minutes, but it takes 17 minutes, and then I leave.
Salisbury?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, but I thought you were in Delmar.
Yeah, well, I'm on the Salisbury side of Delmar. By the time I get out of Delmar, that's what it is. It's 10 minutes to get to Delmar on my way home, but then another 10 minutes to get through town because you can only go 20 miles an hour.
So anyway, 5 miles north of the Maryland border.
Absolutely. So I'm going to make an effort to be here on time is the point. And when I'm here on time, we will start at 5. When I'm not, we will start a little bit after 5. If you're interested in subscribing, you can also do that on the YouTube page, or you can follow stateofthebeer.com, where you can find links to the show and also to Xtreme Brewing, or conversely, you can go to Xtreme Brewing, xtremebrewing.com, either with EX or just with X,
and you'll find the podcast, webcast underneath the everything else.
Right, and it is the Beer with Strangers podcast.
Yes.
I'll be blogging more as the book gets ready to come out. As I said, I'm gonna finish the book this weekend. So once the book is finished, we will be blogging more often. We'll be getting back to do more beer news and hopefully brewing some fun stuff up. We are also going to try and have a live brewing event before too long, certainly before the fall becomes winter. So keep your eyes out for that.
Sounds good.
All right. Other than that, we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
I feel like we should move more.